achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night Singapore card, which will take place on January 4th, and will be the first ever UFC event, live event, featured on their new UFC Fight Pass channel, the digital channel, which you'll be able to buy, and it's going to have, I'm not going to promote it, you guys have probably already seen all the information, but to keep in mind that for the first 2 months, it's free, so anybody can use it, so definitely check out this event. And this, of course, is a quote-unquote regional card that has some decent UFC fighters, including top 10 ranked Tarec Saffiedine, but at the same time, it's got a lot of lesser-known guys, a lot of debuting fighters. Nonetheless, that does not mean we can't take advantage of this. And for my bet packs, I'm only charging $5 for this show. I'm putting all the effort in, and certainly, as I said, if we put the time and research in like I do, we can exploit some lesser-known fighters and maybe pick up some upsets here and there, some overvalued or undervalued fighters based on the books not knowing as much about these fighters. So we'll do what we possibly can do to make some cash here. I'm coming off not a bad night. I went 7-4 at UFC 168. Unfortunate ending to Anderson Silva's fight, possibly his career. I wish him the best in his recovery. Chris Weidman, the champion. I did nail a couple big plays. Of course, I had John Howard to pull the upset, and I put a lot of money down on Dustin Poirier to finish Diego Brandao inside the distance, which paid off well. I had a couple winning parlays, a couple decent props coming my way. The Gleison Tebow defeat was a crushing one. That hurt, and Josh Barnett losing didn't help me either. I went 3-2 on the main card. Nonetheless, it seems like I'm turning things around. I'm starting to hit some of those upsets again on some of those decent paying value cards, and again, we'll try and continue that here. Make sure you check out Kid Kamikaze, the newly named Kid Kamikaze, Josh Harper's. He breaks down his predictions on my website. They have been fantastic. This guy's on a roll and does a great job, and he's been doing much better than I have of late. Plus, the panel, I'm adding new panel predictors to my website, and if you think you want to commit to it and maybe do some posting of your own predictions, please contact me at kamikazeoverdrive@live.ca and let me know what you think, and if I think you make the cut, I'll gladly post you on my website. That's enough for me. We got 6 fights we're going to get into. Again, I said 4 main card fights, plus I'm going to break down 2 preliminary matchups. Let's get to the first of 2 preliminary breakdowns. The first of 2 preliminary bouts I'm going to break down in this episode of the show is in the UFC's lightweight division, as debuting Katsunori Kikuno, 21-5-2, battles 18-3-0 Quinn Mulhern. Now taking a look here, Mulhern is making his 155-pound debut after spending most of his career at 170. He's coming off a 10-month layoff, which was probably used to help get down to his new weight class. Keep that in mind, along with the east to west jet lag impact, which will impact a lot of fighters here traveling, or in this case actually traveling west to east, going from the United States over to Singapore. It really can mess with the body's biological clock in Quinn Mulhern's situation. Mulhern's going to have an 8-inch height advantage as well, which I'll talk about later on, but that's going to come into play here. Mulhern, he's a king of the cage vet, 3-1 in Strikeforce overall, and he lost his UFC debut in disappointing fashion to Rick Story. He has 11 wins by submission, very long limbs, good submissions of his back. He's kind of a Klingon grappler. He gets on guys and he can really grind them out. For Kikuno, this is his UFC debut. He's a 19-fight deep veteran, and he also had a 4-fight turn with Dream as well. And he won the 2009 deep lightweight tournaments. This guy's far from a newcomer to the sport. He's fought and lost to Mizuto Hirota, Eddie Alvarez, and JZ Cavalcante. So he's fought some pretty good guys. He's a black belt in judo, and he's also a black belt in Kyokushin karate. So this guy's very versed in the combat sports. In the Alvarez fight, which I watched, he had Alvarez in a very brutal standing neck crank, hurt him early, and actually won the opening round. He showed a good sprawl. He's got some pretty strong hips, which comes from that judo background. But he was submitted by Alvarez eventually when he tired in the second round, which is something to keep into consideration against a guy like Mulhern, who's very good on the mat. On the feet, Katsunori also 12 wins by knockout. This guy's got some significant power in his hands. He's a very solid kicking game. Really likes to throw a nice front kick. Will really attack with the body kicks. And he hurt Eddie Alvarez with a couple shots to the body. And I expect him to use him to overcome that reach and height disadvantage against a tall guy like Mulhern. Inside, he uses some nice short punches and combinations. Good head movement, which can help him get inside that distance. We saw Mulhern. He got TKO'd by Rick Story. He simply got overwhelmed. He also was stopped by Mike Goyman, with a submission to punches on the ground earlier in his career. When he fought Jason High, he really struggled with High's grappling. He really put up next to no offense. He was taken down repeatedly, couldn't get the fight to the ground on his terms, and that really inhibited his ability to fight to his full potential. For me, I think the height of Mulhern is going to be a detriment in this matchup. He's going to have to make a massive level change to get in for a takedown, and doing it against a judo black belt is going to be very, very difficult. If Mulhern can get this fight to the ground, those long limbs can be a problem for Katsunori, but I anticipate them not not being in a position to use them, and very often anyway. Kikuno, I expect him to use a lot of body kicks and leg kicks, and he's going to bust up Mulhern on the inside when he gets in and use that speed advantage I expect him to have fighting at 155 against a guy coming down from 170. I hope he's not too aggressive, and I think he'll try and avoid making mistakes, but my prediction is Katsunori Kikuno to defeat Quinn Mulhern by decision. Our second preliminary bouts in the UFC featherweight division is Max Blessed Holloway, 7-3-0, battles newcomer Will the Kill Chope, 19-5-0. Chope, he's the tallest featherweight in MMA today at 6'4". Holloway's no slouch either at 5'11", but a 6'4" featherweight is a very tall individual. Chope is a submission fighter. 12 of his 19 wins have come by submission. He doesn't have overly great wrestling, but after the fight goes to the ground, his length gives him a significant advantage, much like Quinn Mulhern we just spoke about. He will work the tie clinch as well. Again, getting that leverage with those arms, he can tie up an opponent's head and really deliver the knees to the body, and if he can pull the head down, he can do a lot of damage. In his last fight against Takanumi Nakayama, he had a lot of trouble in that bout. Eventually won it by third-round stoppage, but Nakayama was having a lot of success early with the clinch, fighting in, putting him on his back, and beating him up. I felt Nakayama really used a lot of pressure and a lot of strong clinch game to overcome Chope, and I expect to see Holloway, have some success there if he elects to. Holloway's a very solid striker. Not a ton of overall experience, but he's got some very good UFC experience considering some of the guys he's faced, like Dennis Bermudez, who I felt he defeated, Conor McGregor in his last bout, which was a disappointing performance, and Dustin Poirier, who he debuted against in short notice. This was some top competition. Holloway, 5.14 strikes landed per minute, which is very impressive. He has a very good kicking game and solid distance management, which can make a guy like Chope struggle to get in and get set up his wrestling if he can't cover that distance effectively. Again, he was overmatched in his last fight. It came down to a guy who's just a bit of a better striker who hit harder, and that led to the grappling advantage too, because Holloway was really thrown off. Holloway's had some trouble on the mat overall in his career. He lost a submission to Dustin Poirier. He's lost 2 decisions that included a lot of time in his back against Conor McGregor. Again, not so much against Bermudez, but still you saw the wrestling play a role, and that's something to keep in mind here against a guy like Chope, who's going to look to try and get this fight to the ground. Nonetheless, Holloway showed excellent takedown defense and distance management. Again, I talk about it again against a very powerful wrestler in Bermudez. He shut down 5 of 9 attempts, and even when he got taken down, he threatened with submissions, got right back up, and was very decent in that fight. And again, I felt he should have got the nod. He showed improved grappling, but it's still a work in progress. For me, Holloway still needs to keep this fight on the feet. He does not want to go to the mat with Chope. His striking and speed, I think, will be a massive factor in the outcome of this fight. Chope is tall, but he's not very quick. His footwork or his hands seem to be really lagging, and that's what's going to cost him against a very speedy guy in Max Holloway. Look for Max. I think he'll be able to light him up on the feet. Chope has been KO'd twice in his career, and I expect to see Holloway really go to the body like he did against Justin Lawrence and take advantage of the longer exposed torso. And my prediction is Max Holloway to defeat Will Chope by TKO. Our first of 4 main card fights takes place in the UFC's bantamweight division as Mr. Perfect Kyung-Ho Kang, 11-7-0 with 1 no contest, makes his 3rd UFC appearance as he takes on 28-8-10 rolling star Suzuki Shimizu. Again, I'm probably butchering that, but I'm doing my best with these new fighters. Now, Shimizu, 10 draws in his career, which is very odd to see. Started his career off 1 win, 1 loss, and 6 draws, which has to be a little bit of a frustrating way to get going. His most recent loss came to former UFCer Montanobo Tezuka. Tezuka went 0-2 in the UFC and bowed out. He has decent striking, good transitions. He's a very aggressive grappler. He'll take a lot of risks to gain position. He really likes a jumping heel hook, which I fully expect to see him throw at least once in this bout. He has a variety of submission options, 19 wins by submission overall. He's also been tapped out 3 times. As I said, he's a high-risk grappler, which could put him on the bottom, which is a major problem if he goes for a move and it doesn't pay off. And against a strong top player like Kyung-Ho Kang, that's something you do not want to do. Now, there's limited footage of the Japanese fighter, but in 2012 in a bout against Estevan Yurja of Kazakhstan, he absolutely was dominated on the mat. Sinju had his back taken, nearly submitted, all off an attempted flying heel hook early in that bout, where he gave up position, never could regain it. He eventually countered out of the position later on and took advantage of a very tight opponent, leading to a submission victory. Now for Kang, he is a massive bantamweight, very big weight cut, and gives him a big size advantage in this bout. Now, he's known as a grappler, but he's a very technical Muay Thai base, solid leg kicks, not a ton of knockout power, just 2 wins by KO, but he does everything very well on the feet. He's also an exceptionally strong judo player. So far in his UFC career, he's got 4 takedowns. He averages 4 takedowns at 67%, 8 takedowns overall in his 2 career fights, and 100% takedown defense, which tells me he's going to be difficult to take off his feet. We saw against Chico Camus, he had very good timing on a shot, looking for Camus to come forward and countered with a takedown attempt, which was successful, and that's signs of a very intelligent fighter. Now, against Alex Caceres in a primary grappling-based fight, he had some trouble with Caceres' long limbs, but one of the issues there was that Caceres, he was tiring out because it was his debut. For me, he's not nearly as good off his back on the mat, and he needs to avoid being put in that position against a guy who's very capable of pulling off submissions. Overall, Kang has 8 wins by submission. Again, he's very strong on the top, really tight control, and he looks to pass. He's very active. I like when he stands up and postures up and drops some big shots and then attempts to throw his opponent's legs to the side and pass from that position. It can be very effective and get himself in side control, and potentially even top mount. Now, in his debut, again, it's cardio cost him, but for me, he arguably could be 2-0 in the UFC. He's been robbed both times by the judges. Now, Camus was very active off his back in the last fight, but he still couldn't get out of that position. He eventually reversed after taking advantage of a mistake by Kang. Nonetheless, I think Kyung-Ho Kang is simply the better fighter here, and my prediction is Kyung-Ho Kang to defeat Sunji Shimizu by positionally based decision. We move now to the UFC's featherweight division as debuting Kiichi Strasser Kunimoto, 15-5-0 battles. Also debuting Luiz Basuro Dutra comes with a record of 11-2-1. Now, Dutra stepping up on short notice, replacing Hyun Lim, who's moving to the main event, take advantage of Jake Ellenberger falling out, and you can't knock him for that opportunity. Dutra's not exactly a UFC newcomer, even though he's debuting here. He was the first overall pick of Big Nog on the Ultimate Fighter Brazilian Season 2 show, but he was injured after winning his first fight, which he won by rear naked choke, and had to bow out of the tournament, unfortunately. Now, he hasn't fought professionally since 2012, and before that it was 2009 since his last fight, so ring rust and inactivity certainly could play a factor here. Now, he did fight and lose to Paulo Thiago, which was by knee injury, and that fight barely had any actual fight time involved. But impressively so, he does have a win over former UFCer Luis Ramos and current UFCer Fabricio Camoes, who we just saw lose at UFC 168. Dutra has 3 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and 5 decisions overall. He has decent hands, strong on top, good trip takedowns, and a decent shot overall when he does shoot in. He'll work that trip in combination. If he does get on top, heavy ground and pound, and he throws some nice elbows from top position. Now, Kunimoto is coming off a win over a former UFC fighter, Edward Falaloto, which is not that impressive, as Edward Falaloto is not that strong of a fighter to start with, but still, nonetheless, it's showing a known fighter that he has taken on. 8 wins by submission overall for the Japanese fighter, and he's a Pancrase veteran. Keep that in mind as well. So he certainly has been exposed to some decent grapplers. He has half-decent striking as far as I'm concerned. Nothing too flashy, at least with the footage I've seen. Not bad on the ground either. For me, Dutra should be the more physical fighter, and has a quality of advantage as far as opponents faced, and that'll show up here as well. My prediction is Luiz Dutra to defeat Kiichi Kunimoto. I'll take Dutra by decision. We now move to the co-main event of the night and a long-awaited debut for many MMA fans, as in the UFC's featherweight division, the Crusher Tatsuya Kawajiri, with a record of 31-7-2, battles undefeated, debuting Sean Soriano, who currently has a mark of 8-0. Now, Kawajiri is a veteran of Japanese MMA, and he also fought for Strikeforce, competing for the title against Gilbert Melendez. He has significant experience with 41 pro fights overall, compared to Soriano with just 8. Now, Kawajiri has shown he has multiple ways he can win bouts, 12 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission, and 10 decision wins. He has some pretty impressive names on his list of victories, including top lightweight contender Josh Thompson, also former top 10 fighter JZ Kamikaze, and UFC veteran Yves Edwards. His losses include to fighters like Gilbert Melendez, which he lost for the Strikeforce title. He also lost to Eddie Alvarez and was submitted by Shinya Aoki, and those are top of the food chain lightweights, so nothing to sneeze at there. Since cutting into featherweight, he's gone 4-0, including holding wins over former UFC fighter Michihiro Omagawa, and also touted Joachim Hansen, who's a very good fighter in his own right. I think featherweight's a more appropriate weight class for Kawajiri's frame. He's a physically strong fighter, and he shows that up here. He gets to show that off against guys his size, as opposed to these larger men at lightweight. Now, he hasn't fought since December 2012, which is a 13-month layoff, which is something to keep in consideration. But because he is such a veteran, I think he'll be able to deal with that. He's a strong wrestler. He has a smothering top control game, and he can do damage from the guard, which is very impressive, very similar to Tito Ortiz. He averages 3.75 takedowns at 61%. We saw him dominate Josh Thompson on the mat and land takedowns and really put it to him. He took down Michihiro Omagawa with a very quick shot. Omagawa was a very strong judo player. He likes to use that tripped takedown shot combination, which can be very difficult to stop. Now, for Sean Soriano, he's undefeated, but he only has 8 pro fights, and he's taking this bout on short notice and stepping up. He's yet to face a lot of adversity in his career, which is something to keep in mind with only 8 pro fights and never having lost. His first 6 fights were finished inside the first or second round, but the last 2 bouts have been 5-rounders, which have been quite impressive. He won them both by decision, so it shows he can go the distance and win fights, and they were dominant wins in the footage I saw. Now, his opponent's lower-level experience as far as guys he's taken on. He's never fought anybody of at this level before. Most of his opponents only have between 4 and 8 fights total. Soriano has very sharp striking, and he also will take the fight to the floor, and he has a decent top game. But the big question is he going to be able to keep Kawajiri from taking him down? There's no doubt I think Soriano will be a much tougher challenge than many people are anticipating for Tatsuya Kawajiri, but I think Kawajiri's wrestling will be the ultimate deciding factor. I think he needs to avoid standing too long with Soriano, start working that ground game, put him on his back, really grind him, crush him, if you will, using his moniker, and make him start second-guessing his ability to keep the fight standing and not nearly as aggressive when they are on the feet for fear of being taken down. Soriano's debuting, he's fighting away from home, fighting overseas, and he's taking on a solid veteran, and that's a lot to overcome. Kawajiri, there's a lot of pressure riding on him as well, representing Japanese MMA, who, a lot of Japanese fighters have struggled in the UFC. We'll see if Kawajiri can start turning that around. Nonetheless, my prediction is Tatsuya Kawajiri to defeat Sean Soriano. I'll take Kawajiri to do it by decision. We move now to the main event of the evening in a welterweight battle that I'm very much looking forward to, and this wasn't even originally the main event that was scheduled. Nonetheless, we have the number 10 ranked Tarec "Sponge" Saffiedine, the last man to hold the Strikeforce welterweight title with a record of 13-3-0, battling the ace Hyun Lim, 12-3-1, who's stepping up to take this fight and taking advantage of the opportunity. As I said, Lim is taking the place of Jake Ellenberger and realizing he has a shot at the top 10 and against a former Strikeforce champion, which is a massive opportunity for the South Korean fighter. Now, Saffiedine, he's coming off a 12-month layup on the shelf. He's making his UFC debut, and he has that West-East travel impact. There's a lot of intangibles that could be affecting Saffiedine in this fight. Physical comparison, Lim is a massive fighter, simply a massive welterweight. The cut can be a problem, and there are some cardio issues involved. We've seen that a little bit, but he is huge. He's going to have a 5-inch height advantage. Depending on what source you read, at least 6.5, but I've heard up to 9-inch reach advantage, and again, he's a massive welterweight. For me, I don't know how much grappling is going to play a role in this fight. It could have a minor role, but again, we'll see. Lim has been submitted twice in his career. Well, Tarec has 5 wins by submission as a BJJ brown belt. Of the two, Saffiedine's going to be the more likely to take the fight to the ground. We saw him use some takedowns against Tyler Stinson, but in his 7-fight UFC Strikeforce career, he only shot and completed 3 successful takedowns. Now, both guys also have very good takedown defense. Saffiedine's very difficult to take off his feet. Lim's pretty decent as well. Lim was taken off his feet by Marcelo Guimaraes when they fought. He was simply too aggressive and got pushing forward in his debut fight. Now, Tarec, we have a matchup here of Saffiedine's very technical, measured striking against Lim's aggressive power striking. Lim, 6.79 strikes landed per minute, which is a huge number to put up over 2 fights, but he's also absorbed 5.25 strikes per minute from his opponent, which is, he's landing better shots, and that power quotient really helps him out. Basically, he will take a shot to land a shot. 9 of his 12 wins are by knockout, so he knows how to put guys away, and he's done it twice in the UFC already. He throws a lot into his punches. He doesn't use his reach that well, and he'll get a little bit wild, but he's willing to take a shot to land a shot, and trade with a guy. He has no problem with that. He has a brutal left hook. We saw him hurt Pascal Crouch with his right hand as well. He has a decent jab, which he can catch guys coming in, especially because of that reach advantage when he does utilize it correctly. He also works a very effective uppercut. He'll throw some leg and head kicks, and he has an excellent stepping knee. He's used it in finishing both of his opponents. He can look for the head to drop down and just come in with that and just delivers it brutally, and that helps when you're so much bigger than your opponent. We saw him use that hard knee strike against to finish both Kraus and Guimaraes. He gets very aggressive when he's attacking, and he has shown a good chin overall. But the thing is, he keeps coming forward. He throws an unorthodox style as well, which can really throw guys off when they're not expecting can't anticipate what they're going to be hit with. Now, Tarec Saffiedine, only 1 win by knockout, 4.27 strikes landed per minute, which is very impressive, and much more impressively, he limits his opponents to 2.49 strikes, so he lands a lot more than he gets hit with. He has good head movement, good footwork. When he fought Tyler Stinson at a pretty good reach advantage, he was able to use those assets, that head movement, and that footwork to get inside the reach and land some good shots. Always excellent hand position, good combinations. He mixes kicks in well, throwing some 1-2s and finishing with a body kick or a head kick or a leg kick, and he will go upstairs. We saw how effective he can be at those leg kicks when he basically took the welterweight title away from Nate Marquardt on his ability to land those low kicks and really take away Marquardt's base. Part of the issue with Saffiedine, a lot of people say, is he a point fighter? Is he going to pitter-patter away at guys and take them out? It appears as much. You never know. You could see power manifest itself, especially against an aggressive fighter who he might be able to catch coming forward. But we did see in the Tyler Stinson fight, he got caught and hurt with some elbows in that bout, and he was backtracking off after he got hurt. He got clipped during an exchange and was on rubber legs again in that fight. And when he was under attack by Stinson, he wasn't the same fighter. You could really see the complexion of the fight change a little bit. He was backing off. He was far more timid, not nearly as technical, and really was focused more on defensive work and getting outworked on the feet. We saw him go to takedowns to change the complexion of that bout, though, and get the advantage back. For me, Lim's going to keep coming forward, and I expect that's going to shut down the kicking game of Saffiedine. An aggressive fighter can really take away his opponent's ability to kick and land those kicks at least, and get everything he wants into them when he throws the kicks. Additionally, Lim hit that counter striking, his ability to throw those big big punches in a counter to Tarec Saffiedine's leg kicks. I think that will show up as well. Saffiedine, he needs to pick away at Lim and drag this fight into the deep round. As far as I know, it is a 5-rounder, which I don't like as much for Lim as far as the cardio is concerned, but we'll see if he gets that far. Lim needs to be aggressive, land those big shots, cut off the cage, and keep attacking, keep Saffiedine moving backwards. I think Lim's power and aggression is going to overwhelm Saffiedine. I think the ring rust and the debut impact is going to show up huge for the former Strikeforce champion. And I'm going to call the upset here, and I'm going to take Hyun Lim to defeat the number 10 ranked Tarec Saffiedine. I'll take Lim to do it by TKO or knockout, but one or the other. So those are my 4 main card predictions, plus 2 preliminary predictions for the upcoming UFC Fight Night Singapore event on Saturday, January 4th. Remember, set your clocks, get up early, get that so you can watch the event. Also, again, the Fight Pass, it can be reviewed later on, but certainly do your best to get, that's going to be a good card. My bet packs for this event will only be $5. I'm still going to put all the effort and work in and look to it, and I feel really good about going into this event and exposing some of the lines. Well, they haven't been set yet, but I anticipate there's going to be some lines that will be a little bit off and should give you an advantage to win somewhere. I imagine Hyun Lim is going to be a significant dog against Tarec Saffiedine. Nonetheless, those are my main card predictions of this event. Kicking off January 2014, it should be a fantastic card of events, and I look forward to it going forward. We'll see how the Fight Pass situation works out. Nonetheless, thank you as always for tuning in. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.